Thank you all so much for having me. So welcome to Off-Campus Housing 101. So to begin the session, I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement. So Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Hautestones that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations, peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. So what is the off-campus housing office? So our primary goal is to educate students and teach them on how to navigate Toronto's complicated rental market. So this includes search tips, strategies in finding safe housing, also connecting students with housing resources and services. However, we are not realtors, so we do not provide individual housing searches, but we will provide you with the resources and tools to conduct your own housing search. A great thing to mention is our website. So this is available 24/7, and we'll talk more about some of the resources there as well throughout the presentation. So the first step in your housing search is to determine your needs. So what is your timeline? We always recommend for students to start searching 40 to 60 days before they're planning to move in. And the reason that we say that is because tenants have to notify their landlord 60 days before they plan to vacate the unit. So that's typically when landlords know that they will have space available. So that's why we always let people know that 40 to 60 days is the perfect time to start your housing search. Let's just say you started looking now for September. The likelihood of a unit that you're viewing and you really like being available for the fall is kind of low. So 40 to 60 days is when we recommend students to start their housing search. Another thing is to learn key housing terms. So we'll go over a lot of them in this presentation, but our office also has a great resource. Another thing to think about is your monthly budget, whether that's for yourself or you and your roommates. So we have a great resource for that in our office as well and on our website. And we'll talk a bit about budgeting in this presentation as well. Also, where you want to live and how to secure this. So, a great place to start your housing search is on a website called Places for Students, and we'll talk a bit about that in this presentation as well. So, kind of the first step is to determine your needs. So, in downtown Toronto, there are quite a few types of housing that are catered to students. So, the first one is an off-campus student residence. So, these are buildings that are independently owned and operated outside of TMU that try and offer a dorm-like experience. And there's various different kinds near campus that are walking distance. Another option is a homestay or sublet. We'll talk about those as well. Also, a off-campus unit. So this is not an off-campus residence. This is a traditional apartment, condo, or a room in a private house, things like that. So an off-campus residence example we can give you is Parkside. So Parkside is a building that's close to TMU. It has a meal plan, so you don't have to worry much about cooking, and it's walking distance. So they try and duplicate the residence experience. So you don't really have to worry much about finding roommates. They do have roommate matching services. So this is just if you wanted to live somewhere near campus, and there's a lot of amenities and events that are very student focused. So that's Parkside student residence. Another option is Avant student housing. So this is less than a 5-minute walk from campus. It's very close and they have their own kitchen. So if you wanted to cook on your own, it's catered a bit more towards independent living. And then also you don't have to worry about roommates and things like that. They have their own roommate matching services. And yeah, it's close to campus and it's a different style of off-campus student residence. And here's another example of an off-campus student residence. It's home on Jarvis. So again, this is located very, very close to campus. And they also have a fully equipped kitchen. So over there, there's no required meal plan. Some people like a meal plan. They don't want to worry about cooking and grocery and things like that. So this is an option where you can cook if you want. And then also because it's close to campus, you can eat at the dining halls if you'd like. Also, they have tons of student-facing amenities. They have a maker studio, tons of quiet study spaces. They have their own recreation facility as well. So that's home on Jarvis. And these are all examples of off-campus student residences. So another option that you can look into is a homestay. So this is an opportunity to stay with a local family or individual. So you would interview with that family, see if they're a fit, and it can be typically a lower cost. And sometimes there might not even be a cost. And homestays, they're looking for students to help them with chores and things like that, cooking. So it can be an exchange of that. And then there's tons of different homestay platforms, so Homodora, things like that. And homestays are typically offered by families, but they can also be offered by individuals and things like that. So homestay is an option you can look into as well. Also, subletting is an option. So I know that some students, they don't plan on staying the full year. Just a heads up that the traditional lease will be 12 months. So if you want something shorter, whether that's your first semester here or both semesters, you can look into finding a sublet. So subletting involves someone renting out their place to another person for a portion of their lease. So you're essentially taking over someone else's lease, and the subtenant agrees to live in their place, pay their rent, and respect the requirements of the rental agreement between them and their landlord. And you can find sublets multiple different ways. A good place to start is places for students. And over there, TMU has its own landing page, so you can find sublets near campus. Now on to off-campus units. So this is where you're signing a traditional lease, and you can see this is like a condo or apartment. And over here is an Ontario standard lease agreement. Over here, it's just a small screenshot, but you can find an official document on a government website. And if you'd like that, you can email our office and we can send it to you. And this is the formal document that's needed for when you sign a lease. So an example is a purpose-built rental. So these are rentals that are specifically built for long-term accommodations. So no, it's owned by a property manager. And an example is Fitzrovia. So Fitzrovia has a property that's very close to TMU, Elm Ludbury. They have a lot of great amenities for students to have their own co-working space. They have a Mayo Clinic if you're feeling unwell in the lobby. They have a lot of wellness amenities as well. So Fitzrovia is an example of a purpose-built rental. So this is an example of finding your own private unit. So a heads up, Toronto's rental market is competitive. Most leases are 12 months starting at the first of the month. And unfortunately, housing scams are real. So it's important to be prepared. So when should you start your search? So I've said this prior, but 40 to 60 days before you want to move in. It may feel last minute, but this is how fast Toronto's housing market moves. And what landlords are looking for is immediate occupancy. So if you start looking now for a place in September, all the units that are being advertised now, they're essentially looking for a June 1st or July 1st move-in date. They're not looking for a September 1st move-in date. So that's important to keep in mind. But it's also always good to just kind of see the pricing and the neighborhoods you might be interested in. But the time to start viewings and things like that, the more official process is about 40 to 60 days before you plan to move in. So budget. These are the things that you should really be looking for before you start your move-in process. So gathering the money for the deposit. So this includes a rent deposit, or if you're looking for an off-campus residence, your residence deposit and key deposits. So essentially, the rent deposit is structured through you pay for your first and last month's rent at once, and that goes towards your 12 months. So it's no extra money. And then a key deposit. So key deposit is essentially, let's just say the landlord needs to make a new key before you move in, and it's to cover that cost. So sometimes you'll have landlords asking for things like security deposits and maintenance deposits. Always ask and get the conversation started why they might need that. And you can also refuse to pay those deposits because they're not actually mandatory. And many times we always tell students not to pay, just to just talk to your landlord about that. Because again, like I mentioned, they're not mandatory. And typically when that is raised from the tenant, the landlord will remove them. So again, the only thing that's required of you is first and last month's rent and a key deposit. So no like maintenance deposits, no security deposit, and nothing like that. Also utilities. Not all places include utilities, so this is something that you need to budget for. Typically, as students, high-speed internet is the way to go, so that can be kind of expensive. So factoring that into your monthly costs. Also, water, hydroelectricity, things like that. That can be a fluctuating expense. Obviously, in summer with the AC going on all the time, and in winter with heating going on all the time, that can fluctuate as well. So If that's something you don't want to worry about, finding a place that has utilities included is great. And then also seeing how old the building is. Newer buildings tend to have lower utility costs due to being more efficient and following green standards. And then older buildings tend to have higher costs of utilities because it just costs more electricity to heat them and cool them. Food. So this is something that I always tell students to factor for. Groceries are pricey. One tip I always tell students is that when you come to TMU, you will get a one card, and all the grocery stores nearby typically have a student discount if you have your one card with you. So right across campus, we have a Loblaws where you can get 10% back in points. You have a Metro as well, where you get 10% off your whole order every day. So make sure when you're grocery shopping to bring your one card with you. It's always a great tip and save money. So eating out, I know it can be convenient, and especially during exams, it's very easy. But budgeting for groceries and things like that, you will save money in the long run. So it's great just to make sure you put money aside. I always tell people it varies person to person, but budgeting anywhere from $100 a week is a great place to start. So tenant insurance. Tenant insurance is something that is very essential for you to have, and it covers all of your belongings. So in case of an emergency, let's just say a pipe burst and there's a leak, and now you have damaged properties, tenant insurance is what's going to cover that. So if you need to replace anything, tenant insurance is definitely essential, and it varies. So it can be anywhere from $35 to $60 a month. But I always tell students it's very important to have tenant insurance, and a lot of places also offer student discounts on tenant insurance. So keeping that one card with you and that proof of enrollment is going to be in key, so you can take advantage of a lot of these student discounts that are offered. A great option for students is commuting. So luckily at TMU, we're very, very centrally located. We're steps away from TMU Station. So let's just say you wanted to live a bit further away and you found something more in your budget that's in a different neighborhood. That's about a 20-minute streetcar ride or a 15-minute subway ride. So commuting is an option. So for that, you would need to have a Presto card. And the second you come here, you'll have your one card. You can actually get a student Presto card, and that's typically $130 a month. So you don't just have to limit yourself to spaces that are walking distance. Because we are so close to all the major transit routes, streetcars, buses, and subways are the fastest way to get to TMU, and all three of them have stops on our campus. So commuting is a very viable option. So if you want to live a little bit further away from campus, you can always commute. So roommates. So I know some people want to, of course, live with other students. So a great place to start is just using your network. So the people in this Zoom chat, people in your classes, people in your program, it's great to connect and use your network. Another way to find roommates is places for students. So they're linked on our website, and there's a roommate profile page. You can see some profiles are already up. You can also post your own profile, and students can communicate with each other, see if you're a match. Another tip is getting to know your potential roommates. Just because someone's your best friend, they might not be the best person to live with. So I always say doing a compatibility quiz. We have a few templates on roommate matching and roommate compatibility in our office. So you can feel free to email us. You guys will get our contact information at the end of this. So feel free to reach out. We have great resources on that. Also, confirming your roommates before you plan to move in and making an agreement. Sometimes issues can come up regarding like cleaning schedules, and smaller issues can get larger and larger if they go unaddressed. So if you plan to live with someone, setting an agreement from the time you guys move in is a great place to start, and it really diminishes issues that might come later on. So we have a lot of roommate agreement templates in our office. We also have roommate budgeting templates as well, so you guys can budget things like how much you want to spend on groceries, how much you want to spend on things like laundry detergent, things that you guys would share. So where do you start looking for your housing? So online is a great place to start. Like we mentioned, places for students, TMU has its own landing page, and a lot of those listings are very close to campus. But you can also check out Zillow, PadMapper, rentals.ca, condos.ca. There's tons of different options. Also, there's a few rental marketplaces you can check out as well. There's Facebook Marketplace, there's Kijiji. You can also work with a real estate agent too. That's an option. Just a tip when it comes to the real estate agents, you as a tenant never has to pay the real estate agent. The real estate agent gets paid by the landlord. So essentially what happens is when you pay your deposit, the realtor gets a portion of that deposit. So you're never paying for anything out of pocket. If at any point a realtor is asking you for money, that's a big red flag that it might be a scam. So again, that's something to keep in mind. So you can use a real estate agent. The only thing is they typically work with market price. So the units that realtors are showing tend to be a little bit more pricey than what you might find on like a marketplace or a places for students. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But again, right now, luckily, there is a lot of inventory in the market, and a real estate agent might be helpful for you, and it does not cost you anything either. So feel free to explore your options. So unfortunately, housing scams are very real. So the advice we give students is to verify your listing. Double, triple check the place you're looking at. Check on Google, check on Reddit, type in the building, type in the landlord and scam, see what comes up, and vet and verify everything before going to showings, before signing anything. Another thing we always tell students is to keep your cash close. The only time that you should be making a payment is after a lease is signed. So at no point should you be sending money to anyone before signing a lease. That's a huge indicator of a red flag and unfortunately a scam. So keeping your cash close, no payments to be made before a lease is signed. Another option is checking the place out. So especially after the pandemic, a lot of things can be done virtually. So things like showings can be done virtually. But when you're seeing the place, make sure that they're showing you the actual unit that you plan to live in. So not a model unit, not a showroom, nothing like that. The actual unit that you are planning to live. So making sure that you're checking the room number, things like that. But yeah, virtual showings are a great way to see the place. Also, understanding your rights as a tenant. So we're going to talk a bit more about that later on in the presentation. Another tip I tell students is to keep your guard up. If something in your stomach feels wrong or something feels too good to be true, it likely is. So you can always reach out to us if you need more assistance or if you have any questions that come up during your housing search. If you ever wanted us to look at something for you, we're happy to help. And we can refer students to other resources on campus as well. When you're a student here at TMU, you do get student legal aid. So that's an option as well. So the importance of viewings. So our office has a great resource for this, but one thing we always tell people is if you can go with other people and if you have some time to visit places before you plan to start school, it's good. But if you can bring other people with you, it's great to have another pair of eyes with you at the showings. Another thing is to set time aside before you plan to move in to coming to Toronto early to attend the viewings. This might not be an option for everyone, but we do highly encourage you to see the space in person. And if you cannot make it to Toronto and attend viewings, you can always look at the off-campus residence buildings. They're always a good option. And again, you can see the places, they're more dorm styled. And then with the virtual showings, it's a little bit easier to go that route than it is to find your own place. So to prepare for rental applications, gathering your first and last month's rent, this is the norm. So making sure you have that prepared, proof of enrollment. So you can get this through My Service Hub and making sure that you have that because that's what a lot of times landlords will ask. Also, having government ID is important. Anytime you're submitting a housing application, you will be asked for government ID. Also securing a guarantor. So this isn't always required, but it is good, and you will see a lot of housing applications and landlords ask for a guarantor. So this does not have to be a family member. It's just someone that has a Canadian bank account and a credit score. But this isn't mandatory, but typically students will be asked for a guarantor. And essentially the way that that works is that let's just say in any case you were defaulting on any of your payments, the guarantor would then be responsible. So that's why landlords ask for a guarantor. Another thing to keep in mind is that any housing applications and deposits are legally binding. So we always tell people to submit one application at a time. Let's just say you saw three different places and you really like them, and then you submitted three different housing applications and you got all three units, you would then be on the hook for three different leases. So they are legally binding. I always tell people you will hear back pretty quick if you did get a unit or not. So it's good to just space it out and wait it out. So let's just say you submitted a housing application and you heard back the next day and you didn't get it, then you can move forward with the next housing application. But submitting many housing applications at once is not the way to go, especially since they are legally binding. Okay, so landlords cannot ask for a viewing fee, application fee, or security and damage deposit. So I talked about this earlier in the presentation, but this is just a good reminder. This is a huge red flag if landlords are asking for these things. It's typically like very highly likely a scam. So the only deposit they can ask for is the first and last month's rent and a key deposit. And even the key deposit cannot be an exorbitant amount. It's just to cover the cost of making a new key. Another thing to keep in mind is that you should always have a copy of your lease. This does not have to be a physical copy. This can also be a digital copy, just so you can refer to any of the terms in your agreement, and you should be equipped with having a copy, so everything's there in paper. So the Residential Tenancies Act. So as a tenant, you are most likely protected under the Ontario Residential Tenancy Acts, the RTA. There are exceptions in the RTA, and you can check if you're covered. The RTA doesn't cover things like the student residences on campus. Those are not covered by the RTA. But in most situations, you are covered under the Residential Tenancies Act. So the RTA sets the rules and regulations for landlords, tenants, including rent increases, evictions, repairs, and many other issues that affect tenants. Your landlord is responsible for providing vital services such as heat, hot and cold water, electricity, and fuel such as natural gas if you have a gas stove. And another thing is in Canada, your landlord must heat your home from September 1st to June 15th. So in Canada, air conditioning is not mandatory, but heating obviously is mandatory. So all the units and places you see should have heating working, and luckily most of them do. So another thing is landlords have to ensure your privacy, so they cannot enter your home for any random reason. They typically have to provide you with notice in advance, or they're able to enter in extreme conditions. So let's just say a pipe burst or there's very extreme repairs that need to be done to the unit. That's the only time that your landlord can enter your unit. Besides that, your privacy has to be ensured. Also, your unit has to comply with health, safety, and housing maintenance standards. Also, they need to provide you with a signed copy of your lease, including their contact information. So if anything comes up, you need to have your landlord's email and phone number because as a tenant, a lot of things are under the landlord's responsibility, not yours. So what are you responsible for? So just being prepared to be committed. Like I mentioned previously, once you sign a lease or pay a deposit, no matter how small the deposit is, you are bound to that apartment. Application forms can even be binding, so make sure that you want to live in the apartment that you're applying to. Also, like we mentioned previously, pay your key deposit, your first and last month's rent. Also, taking photos of the unit before moving in. So typically there's a move-out inspection. So let's just say there's a stain in the oven that the landlord notices, and that stain was there before. When you have the photos, you can show them the documentation and you won't be liable for that. So just making sure you have photos of anything you notice in the unit, you have documentation and proof. Also, when you're moving in, you might have to book an elevator. So just reaching out to the landlord and asking them how the process is of booking an elevator, it just makes the whole move-in process much easier. If you're moving into an off-campus student residence, they typically have like move-in days and stuff like that. So in those situations, you don't need to book an elevator. But if you're looking for an off-campus private housing situation, you typically will have to book an elevator. Also, making sure you have your tenant insurance ready as well. So thank you guys so much for sitting through this presentation. So at our office, the fastest way to reach us is by email. So it's offcamp@torontomu.ca. We offer one-on-one appointments. We also have drop-in sessions throughout the school year. So you're welcome to drop into those as well if you had any questions that came up during your time here in Toronto. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Kudara. This is very informative. Um, so I see some of them just joining and dropped off. I guess it's the internet issue. Anyway, if you have any questions for Kudara, please, you can just unmute yourself, ask questions. Yes, Sachi?
Hi. So I was checking out places for students and I was trying to sign up. It says that students must use their school email. Now, I don't know if I have that already. Like, when will we get the school email?
Very good question. You will have the TMU school email account activated sometime after the matriculation. Usually it's in the early August. So that would be in the middle of the August. That is after you clear your conditions. For example, if you have any conditions that you need to submit a official transcripts, that's something you can follow up right now if you have already graduated from your school. So once the matriculation happens and the graduates studies level, and then you will be emailed to activate your TMU email account. In the meantime, you can reach out to the program and then copy the person who you are looking for the place, and we can answer provide info. Say you're an incoming student, you will have your email sometimes in mid of the August if that helps.
Yes. Sorry. Would you repeat the last part? Who should I contact if I needed
The program email account. So,
programming?
which program you are accepted into the creative school?
Uh, MA in fashion.
MA in fashion? Okay, great.
Yes.
So, would it be the grad fashion at
Yes.
torontomu.ca? So, you know the program
Mm-hmm.
email, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So, just email us if
Okay.
you, yeah, if you need something like that.
Yes. Okay.
Great question. I'm curious. I know Satya, you are in Toronto, and then you're just looking for the place around the campus, right? For anyone else, like, are you guys located outside Canada or a different province? You are attending this session and you are looking for some information. You don't have to necessarily share anything if you don't want to. Um, so I'm just trying to be helpful here. In the meantime, I have a question for Kodada. So you
Hmm.
mentioned typically 40 to 60 days. To look for a place. So that's about 2 months. Also apply to international students who are coming to Canada.
Yes, absolutely. So I would say the different types of housing have different timelines. So if you wanted to look for an off-campus student residence, you could apply now. Like they don't really run on the same thing. But if you were looking for like a room in a shared house, a condo or an apartment, still 40 to 60 days.
Oh, okay.
Even for international students, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Okay, great to know. Someone is out of province. Great, thanks for sharing. Are there any extra documents or credentials needed if you are not a Canadian resident? Great question. I will leave that to you.
So, not really. Essentially, the main things that they're looking for is proof of enrollment. So that's just something you can get through My Service Hub, and they just want to confirm your student status before they rent to a student. So a lot of the off-campus student residences will ask for that as well. A lot of the private listings will also ask for that. So nothing too out of the ordinary.
For the proof of enrollment, I think for undergrads, you can get it from the registrar, My Student Service Hub. But for graduate students, they just need to reach out to the program email.
Okay.
Yeah, they cannot actually have that accessed from this My Service Hub. So if you ever need a proof of enrollment, you can email the program that you are accepting into. So we will write you a something not a proof of enrollment because you are not enrolled yet until late August. But something similar that you are coming to the program and you will be enrolled in September. Um, Sacha, go ahead.
Yes. So places for students is more like a dorm style living arrangement, right?
No, so Places for Students is essentially a listing service.
Oh
So,
yeah.
the dorm style is more of the off-campus student residences that I had mentioned during the presentation. So places for students is essentially just a listing service where a lot of them are close to campus and a lot of the landlords have worked with students before.
Got it.
And yeah,
Yes.
you'll find like a lot of the listings on places for students because they know that students are looking for housing typically from like September until May. So you can also find different lease types there, but I always tell people to be prepared that it is the standard traditional 12 months lease. That's what you'll find out there a lot. But on places for students, you can find shorter term leases as well.
Got it. The first ones you mentioned, the Avon students housing and home on Jarvis. So those are more of dorm style, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And are postgrad students allowed there? As in, is it also for them, or is it just for?
Yes.
Okay,
So it's actually a great option for graduate students because our on-campus residence primarily caters to first year students. It's very limited to even second, third year, fourth year. We unfortunately don't have space to accommodate those students. So for graduate students, the off-campus student residences are a great option. And again, they have like lots of events and stuff. So they try and duplicate what we have here on campus. But again, they are super close by, so you can attend the events that are at TMU. You can also attend the events for those specific buildings. So it's a great place to meet people.
great. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
I see a question in the chat. Does the off-campus student housing tend to be more expensive than a typical apartment?
So it totally varies. Some of the off-campus student residences tend to be a bit more expensive, and that might be because of the meal plan and some of the amenities that are offered. But again, you have to look at like, are you planning to commute? Are you not planning to commute? I would say for the downtown core, if you wanted a room in a house, budget anywhere from like $1,400 to $1,700. And if you wanted your own apartment, I would say anywhere from like $1,900 to $2,300. But it varies. It varies. So you can, of course, like find a good deal and things like that. But it varies. I wouldn't say that it's always going to be more expensive than a typical apartment, but of course, it depends on if it's like a brand new apartment with all these like nice shiny amenities, or if it's a bit more older and a bit further away. So it varies.
Good questions. Um, I have a follow-up question for the places for students. So the landlord who lists their places on the places for students, are they necessarily went through, did they go through any sort of the security or check process with the anyone like in that sense?
So that's a good question. So we like places for students is like completely independently run and operated. So they're not like affiliated by us. So there's no vetting process that TMU does. But it's a more, I would say, student-friendly rental platform. So the similar way that you might look at apartments.ca or Zillow, they're a bit more catered towards like young professionals. And again, the listings are more like divided by neighborhood, like here and there, versus like places for students. The map you'll see on that website is closer to TMU. So there's no like vetting process or anything like that. But that's a good question. So they're like independently operated.
Great, thank you. Um, Yeah, there there are a lot of options. Apartments, right? And then rental apartments, condominiums apartments, houses, right?
Yeah,
Townhouses, they are different, or you rent it with a roommate or you share with a kitchen, things like that. It all depends on what type of accommodation that you're looking for and your budget.
totally.
Yeah. Um, Let me just double check the chat. I don't see any more questions. Let us know if you have any more questions. If not, we can conclude this session and we will have the slides and then the recording on the onboarding website. So you can always refer back to. If you have any additional questions, you want to connect with the Kudada. I didn't put the Kudada. Do you mind to put your contact in there in the chat?
Of course, I'd be
Yeah.
happy to.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. Clara, thank you so much for the info session. I guess I will connect with you again for the next year. Someone just joined now. Maybe we just give that student a chance if that student has any questions. And before I close the session. Um, Hello, Dari. Thanks for joining the session. We finished the presentation and we did some questions. Let us know if you have any questions. By the way, the slides and recording will be posted on the onboarding website, so you can refer back to the information. You can just unmute or you can just type in the chat.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I was gonna join, but I guess I'll just watch the rediffusion. I didn't pay. I was a little late. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay, totally okay. So I'm gonna just send the off-campus the email address here, offcamp@torontomu.ca, and the slides and recording will be posted on the onboarding website. If it's not tomorrow, will be early next week. Thanks very much again, everyone, for the session. Thank you very much, Kudada. Thank you very much. And everyone, have a great day. I'm gonna close the session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.